Good afternoon. How far will robotics go to serve our domestic needs? First, we have to define what domestic means. Many chores have become commonplace and are taken for granted, like food options. Fast food has dominated the market, whereas a personal chef becomes optional. How quickly you want your food prepared versus the quality of the preparation, not to mention having control over the ingredients that go into making it. Handling domestic chores, such as running errands, is big business. So are house cleaning services. But what about the day-to-day tasks performed at the office where automation has seemed to take over? Technology has designed efficient ways to keep us on track. For example, when a computer goes down, there is IT staff. Understanding the technical requirements of the hardware or software installed on a network will mean greater maintenance and upkeep. Can this be automated as well to the point of no longer needing human intervention? Robotics. Robotics is advancement in computer science to programmable components that can take over everyday tasks. With robotics, the bottom line is efficient services handled according to the designer's will. So robotics is really an area of wishful thinking where whims come under the control of the master. This is a new way of defining it to prove that robotic is software engineered while still under human control. Let's look at some of the ways that advancement in science have taken us so far. Don't throw out the electronic tinker toy kits that your kids play with either, since tinkering in his garage with electronics and computer components is how Bill Gates created something that was absolutely life-changing: Microsoft. We like to think of robotics experiments as either foreign or alien because it is mostly ahead of its time. But many advances are commonplace, and we use them so often we take them for granted. The microwave paved the way for instant gratification in cooking, and we have also somehow survived those potentially lethal doses of infrared heat that transpire during cooking. With the ability to operate them safely, we have used the same technology to take us to the moon. A push of a button makes our life easier, but programmable memory is at the root of most inventions. Even if connected wirelessly, the connection requires coding or a brain. For inventions to be accepted, they need to be palatable, or at least aesthetically beautiful in some way, so as not to be scary. Intimidating? Perhaps. Scary? No. We are accepting of things that make our life easier if they are useful and functional without having to put too much effort into maintaining them. A pseudo bar is set before the invention becomes a household name for daily use. The bar is simply that we must be able to understand its functionality, not necessarily the technology that's behind it. Microwaves have made their way to the office, our workplace, convenience stores, and can serve as mini kitchens. Most people now take these robotics for granted, as well as the technology that went into creating it. There are amputees who benefit from robotics. An extension of a non-working arm or leg can do wonders, as seen in movies such as Bionic Woman or Bionic Man. These may be movies that were made back in the 70s and represent older technology, but great strides have been made in these areas, with some appliances being made of titanic steel to replicate superpowers such as in the movie Iron Man. This is also where we can get the notion that a fleet of aliens has essentially taken over these programmable devices, but in reality it had been years in the making and was likely decades away from being accepted. Society isn't always ready for these advancements, but when preparedness meets opportunity, then things can often take off unexpectedly and be introduced into the mainstream. Drones are another example of us not having been prepared already. This advancement in spacecraft has capabilities to take over entire military operations, reconnaissance, and surveillance. With so much at stake with the technology that's available, we have to be careful in how far we go with this domestication. We should not be creating an us versus them situation, but merging as one. Here is a likely scenario. Robot. Good morning, madam, sir. Here's your cup of coffee with 2 creams and 1 sugar. Would you like me to get you the morning paper? Human. No, thank you. I have my iPad handy. Robot. I flipped the pages on your iPad for you to read the Wall Street Journal. Human. Thank you. Robot. Anything else I can do for you? Human. Yes. Breakfast. With breakfast on his mind, the human turns to the robot, staring at its eyes. A red dot is seen racing across the room. The robot does some twitching and then leaves the room to come back with breakfast. What has happened in this futuristic scenario episode is that the robots were communicating with each other. The servant robot, acting on telepathic, wireless instructions from its master, had essentially programmed the other devices to cook the eggs, toast the bread, fry the bacon, and then bring it all upstairs to his room and serve him in bed. Sure, robots can become commonplace and do the chores we no longer want to do for ourselves and for the sake of convenience. But like anything else that we have learned from in technology, something is bound to go wrong. What does the robot do if something gets in the soup? A fly, maybe. Bugs can be introduced and cause something to go haywire. Hacking into software is one of our biggest problems. If we are domesticating ourselves to the point of no longer doing things for ourselves and manifesting thought processes that trigger robots to make things happen, then are we really being efficient or streamlining? Or are we developing patterns of laziness disguised as creativity? Outsourcing jobs is another example. We use printers, word processors, and the like to automate many of the tasks performed around the office. Not coming into the office or telecommuting is also an option. But do we need everything so efficiently ran that we don't even need to get up and go to work? Is play what we are striving for? Play is the opposite of work. And maybe not doing anything at all will cause a permanent leisurely vacation in our lifestyles. Granted, this is already happening in some cases, depending on what industry you work in. Well, for everyday folks living in a modern society, it is work and jobs that drive the economy. Most people get up and go into the office to make a living, but it is automation that is lessening this work and making robotics common in the workplace, just like appliance service in the home. Creating technologies that can eventually take over doing our jobs and domesticating the workforce is a strong possibility. There will be many questions asked as we pave the way into the next century of innovation. Namely, is it morally and ethically right to do away with people's jobs? Do large corporations know what's at stake when they no longer have a thriving workforce? The impact of joblessness might put a strain on the economy and replacements not necessarily making improvements. There has to be a way to bridge innovations and modern times in a way. There has to be a way to bridge innovations with modern times in a way that doesn't leave holes or gaps. If robots are to take over all of our interactions, then we as a society should brace for it. If something is in the pipeline and being developed as a replacement, then instead of waiting 10 to 20 years before it becomes a part of the mainstream, it should be demonstrated to show what capabilities are present that will help us get used to it. You can't just introduce a talking robot that will serve you breakfast, then by transference to other devices, initiate actions to iron clothes, pressure jeans, pick out something to wear based on the weather outside, or for that matter, the colors you like. Talking about it and generating awareness are two different things. The way technology is viewed by a technical audience is much different than for the average person. Technologists embrace change, whereas the average person might see it as foreign or alien, something that is being introduced from outer space since it practically came out of nowhere. This is not surprising when you think about it, because technology that's been in the works or pipeline doesn't always arrive in the nick of time. People were afraid to touch those buttons on the microwave until they knew they couldn't get zapped from just looking at it. And a robotic hand or device wasn't always appealing aesthetically, because at first it was awkward and clumsy and looked like a claw. But when it came with superpowers that were possibly beyond human strength, then it could be more accepted. The reason is quite possibly because of the movies that introduced it. Without making generalizations about newer technology and innovations in particular, it is safe to say that generating awareness about a technology before it is introduced will help with society's acceptance of it. Ever since robotics was introduced in the last decades, most people have remained skeptical of its real purpose. Convenience more than domestication seems to have been the goal as far as creating devices that are practical for everyday use. We also appear to be headed in the direction of living under the nuances of the genie, where, as far as a robot is concerned, your wish is my command. Other predicted examples of futuristic robot innovations that are feasible based on current technology would be AI, artificial intelligence, machines that are outsmarting people in their thinking and communicating telepathically, high stakes smart machines used in self defense, beyond drones or military. People might design their own virtual bodyguards to walk around with. Digital and 3D special effects, movies, theater, art, pictures, acting, motion, real to life creatures present and walking amongst us. Hospitals and surgery. No more transplants needed from humans for humans, but they can be done artificially. Medicines and pharmaceuticals, virtual cures, virus containment, non-placebo trials bringing remedies faster due to more participants available because of not working, jobs being outsourced, too much time on their hands, leisurely lifestyle. These are just some of the things that might happen when the design of technology outpaces the need and where the predictions or consequences are not known. Keeping up with the Joneses will no longer matter, but having the latest innovations might. When the things that are built in the past come to fruition 20 years later, we likely won't be ready to accept it because the past isn't an accurate prediction of our very near future. By the time we get used to the gadgets that have been introduced to serve us better, they will then become old again and no longer suffice. This is a clever way of saying that it's a never-ending process in which the new becomes the old and the old becomes something that is new simply because it was built on the foundation of yesterday's technology. And once we have come to the realization that history repeats itself in a fancier way, we can come to grips with accepting what's put out there as the next innovation. Thus, the concept of cooking, for example, are not new. The concepts of cooking, for example, are not new, but the way in which we choose to do it might be. Robotics will every industry if it hasn't already. And each contribution that's made will seek to intrigue the next generation who has become too commonplace with the notion that inspiration comes from foreigners or aliens, when for many who seek to become like a Bill Gates, advancements in science and technology will come naturally from inquiring minds that want to make things happen. Engaging in the here and now of technology will help ease our transition. So we're educating folks about what's in the pipeline in order to make it easier to accept what will become commonplace. And remaining excited but also skeptical as to what robots can and should do to make life easier will help us focus on what's important about the future. Thank you for your time.